Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of the REFSIX Weekly. We are going to be going through a ton of interesting refereeing incidents from the Premier League this weekend and the start of this season's Champions League. As always, I'm joined by my hosts, Riman and John. How are you guys doing?
Right.
Very good.
Good, good. Riman's a little bit upset because obviously Man U didn't have the best of weeks in the Champions League. And for those who are just joining us, my name's Hassan and I am the host of the show. So what we normally do is go through a few different pieces of news in the refereeing world, and there's a few this week. So in France, in Liga, Bordeaux's match was actually undertaken or officiated by a Portuguese referee. So the French league and the Portuguese league have done an exchange. So that's pretty interesting to see some of the top leagues exchanging referees, so those referees can get experience in different countries, etc. Riman, where if you could get to go and referee in a different country, where would you pick?
I didn't think about that, but I'll probably go to a country where they speak English.
Okay.
It's gonna be easier, I guess.
Yeah. Jo-
Otherwise, if I go to Spain, I would probably have a hard time explaining the rules in Spain.
yeah.
But
John, what about you?
If we're talking about quality of football, I'd like to go to Spain, but if not, it'd be America for me. I think
Okay.
the American circuit looks quite fun.
I would actually pick a place where they didn't speak English. I think it would be quite interesting to test yourself in terms of managing a game where they couldn't understand a word you were saying and you have to do it with body language. I think that would be really
but
cool. But
but there are these exchange programs because I know a
Mhm.
guy going to Singapore and refereeing there, and he thinks it's amazing. So
Yeah. No, shout out to tournaments abroad and Daniele who arrange referees to go and referee in tournaments all over the world. So really cool. In the NFL, there was a really big achievement this year. Maya Chaka became the first black woman referee to officiate an NFL game. So kudos to her. Amazing to see the NFL promoting female referees and women and referees from different backgrounds. So amazing to see. And then, in terms of our own English officials, this week saw the return of the Champions League, and both Anthony Taylor and Michael Oliver's teams from the Euros, who did a fantastic job in the Euros this summer, both officiated in the Champions League this week. Anthony Taylor officiated Dinamo Kiev against Benfica, and Michael Oliver got probably the biggest game of the round, which was Bayern Munich against Barcelona. So great to see the teams going out and officiating in Europe. So let's start with delving into some of the major incidents from the Premier League, and then we'll go into the Champions League straight after. But in terms of the Premier League, there was quite a few different incidents happen this week, a few red cards, a few offsides, a few penalties, but we've picked out the ones that we think are the ones that we can learn the most from or we can talk a lot about. So one of the biggest decisions happened in this early kickoff on Saturday. There was a challenge put in by a Leeds player on Harvey Elliot, who ended up, it seems, breaking his leg or ankle, and he's had surgery and hopefully he recovers well. This was a really interesting incident, not from because of the injury, but because the challenge seemed to be the referee had basically allowed play to continue. But once the incident was, the injury was kind of deemed to be really serious, play was stopped. And actually, the Leeds player was then shown a red card for the challenge. So I'm going to go around the houses and start with you, John, on this as a Liverpool fan. What are your thoughts on, firstly, the challenge, and then actually how the decision came about that a red card should be shown?
Well, it seemed a bit weird because I watched it live and the challenge went in and none of us thought really too much of it. And it seemed a bit of a bizarre one that the player stopped, but we looked like Salah had called his trainer on straight away. So he looked like it was a serious injury. And, the only reason I can see it being a red card is because he's come from behind and he looks like he's left the floor. So he's out of control. So he's not in control. And that would be and he's endangered the safety of an opponent, would be the only tick boxes. So for serious foul play. But because he's left the ground and got in from behind, that would be the reason. But it wasn't like he's deliberately done it on purpose. He's not gone in with intent. The speed's not that much or fast. You know, it ticks a few boxes, but it's a red card that you'd probably be like, oh, it looks harsh because it doesn't tick all the boxes.
Yeah, and it seems that, or I saw some people saying that the red card was shown after the referee had seen the injury and therefore deemed it to be a red card. But what it looks like is the fourth official has had the best view of the incident, has relayed some messaging to the referee to say this was a red card challenge, and that's where it was given. And there was no VAR intervention in the initial awarding of the red card, and obviously they allowed it to stand. There was no clear and obvious error. Roman, what were your thoughts on the challenge?
Well, personally, I don't think there was a red card. I only think he gave the red card because of the injury, which in the end I think is fine. But if he didn't break his leg or ankle, would we have seen a red card? If I have to answer it myself, no, I don't think so. Maybe a yellow card, but as you said, it's like he let the play continue and only stopped it because they were gathering around Elliot and saying, "Hey, stop the play. There's an injury." So personally, I don't think it's a red card. It's a tackle from behind, so not that serious. I don't think it's that serious again. So no, I don't think it's a red card, but only a red card because of the injury. So
fair enough. Definitely a foul and a yellow for sure.
Yeah, as minimum.
Red, yeah. Red is a possibility. Okay, cool. Later in the game, Fabinho scored. I think it was the second goal for Liverpool, and it was quite interesting because there was the ball gone past the goalkeeper, and Mane was standing in an offside position, and I think it was Rodrigo or one of the Leeds players was on the line, and Mane was in the view of the defender, but the ball's kind of gone a little bit to the right of the Leeds defender in the back of the net. Some people, they did check this for offside, and it was deemed that the goal should stand. So really keen to hear your thoughts on this one. Ramon, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I hate offsides, and when we have VAR, I think where they measure and look and everything, we must think that is the right decision, right? I don't think that's offside. As a short answer. So I think the goal was fine. The goal stands. So, yeah.
And I agree with you. But let's be clear. So Mane is definitely in an offside position. It's just whether or not he's interfering with the Leeds player on the line. And I actually think there's two right decisions here, depending on the reaction of the Leeds player. So if you watch the goal, the Leeds player basically shrugs his shoulders, he looks down, and he's just disappointed that the goal's gone in. And therefore, if you award an offside, it's a little bit of a surprise to give the offside. Whereas if the Leeds player, as soon as that goal goes in, puts his hand up and starts saying, "Well, I've been impeded. He's impeded me from getting the ball," I think that's when it becomes offside, because it's clear that Mane has actually then interfered with the Leeds' line of vision. John, what do you think on that? Am I oversimplifying it there? Should we look at player reaction in this kind of scenario?
Yes and no. We speak about it a lot. Excuse me. We speak about it a lot about player expectations and what is the expectation of football. I personally don't think the Leeds player knows or may not know the rules that much, because obviously the goalkeeper's in front of him, isn't he? So he might just think goalkeeper's in front of me, can't be offside. And as a lot of players do think that, they forget that if they swap places with the goalkeeper, it's the second rearmost defender. Because when you referee, you always hear it's the last defender. So, and that's still now. So potentially that's a lack of knowledge from like the defender's part. However, I still think that even if the player started screaming and shouting, there's nothing really in there for me, because the ball is hit at about 1,000 miles an hour. Unless he has supersonic reactions, I don't think he's saving it or stopping it anyway. And Mane, I think, does his best to get out of the way. So, but I think the ball was struck so quickly, I don't think it would really make too much of a difference. It's hit from maybe 8 yards out, and it's fired in. I don't think there's really any chance of them saying, even if Mane was basically on top of him, he was getting it anyway.
No, that's fair. That's a good point. So let's move on. Let's move on to a red card that happened in the Spurs Crystal Palace game. Tanganga had basically been sent off for 2 yellow cards. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about. So the first yellow card was for basically fouling Zaha and getting up and pushing him and a start of a mass confrontation. So John Moss, the referee, gave a yellow card to both Tanganga and Zaha. I saw some people saying maybe that should have been a red card in itself. But let's talk about that. And then the second was a minute or two later for a challenge, for a quick challenge, a reckless challenge. So that yellow card in itself seemed correct, seemed pretty stupid for him to go in straight after being yellow carded, and obviously he's lost his head at that point. But should the first incident of mass confrontation that started with Zaha, should have that led to a red, or was it managed well by the referee in that instance?
I think it depends obviously we don't get what John Moss has booked players for cautioned. So has he cautioned Tandanga for, because there's an argument for 2 yellow cards in that whole situation, isn't there? There's an argument for a yellow card on the foul. Yes, his arm is high, but it's not malicious intent. He's not used it as a weapon. Fine, yellow card. And then because he's booked Zaha as well, have you booked them both for adopting aggressive attitude? So therefore, is it a yellow card and a foul, and then another yellow card potentially for the A&A? Or what has he done? Has he only booked Tanganga for the adopting aggressive attitude and not for the foul? So there's an argument for a red card in there because there are potentially 2 cautionable offences, I think, in there. It's not a straight red, in my opinion, with the way that they went about it. They were both side by side. I think, he's just misjudged the height of everything. So I think that's a yellow card anyway. And then you potentially could have sent them off straight away for the afters.
And I think that's a really interesting point, because technically, yeah, you could have found 2 yellow cards there, but football doesn't expect that type. Like, I think he got away with one there, right? In the sense that he got away with the foul and then the aggressive attitude. He got away with one of them, but at football, it would have looked we would probably having much more of a debate if there was 2 yellows and a red shown in this particular incident than what actually occurred. So what about you, Roman?
Well, I agree with John on this one here, both on the first and the second one. The thing is, the referee took the easy way out here, right? Like when something like this happens between 2 players, the easiest thing to do is just give them a yellow card each and move on, right? I definitely think a minimum a yellow card. If it was a punch or not, probably not, but definitely think was a yellow card. The first one, and then they got into a small fight, and then both of them got a yellow card. So I think he did the professional thing, and he took the easy way out, giving a yellow card to each, and let's move on.
I think I agree with you, and I think this is what I would define as safe refereeing. This is like keeping yourself safe, not causing too much of an issue, and you move on from it. So that is perfect. And then on Monday Night Football, we saw Everton take on Burnley, and this was a really super interesting challenge from James Tarkowski, who basically was in the right back position. Richarlyson was running down the left, and Tarkowski's come in flying. I will be able to describe it as flying through. He wins the ball. I think the ball goes into like the 10th row in the stand, and then cleans out Richarlyson. So 20 years ago, this would have been an absolutely phenomenal challenge. And actually, the referee allows it to go. He gives a throw in. And then different people have talked about, well, is this just because he wins the ball? And we've talked about it during the Euros, just because you win the ball doesn't mean that you can then take out the player afterwards, right? Or anything. And Sky Sports after the game went into detail on this challenge and talked about should we still allow these types of challenges to happen in the Premier League? So Roman, what were you watched it? Yeah, what were your thoughts?
Well, I was thinking what the referee was thinking about when he didn't give a yellow card, then a free kick, because it looked dangerous play. I mean, it was a dangerous play, so I could understand how he just gave a throw in and let's move on. It's definitely minimum a yellow card there. Maybe we could talk about a red card because he's coming in with a high force, legs up, as you were saying, flying. So how he got away with nothing is a mystery for me. And yeah, a lot of people have been discussing this, but for me, it's a definitely yellow card and a free kick. So I don't know why he didn't do anything about it. So.
No, that's fair. John?
Yeah, I think there's an argument of setting your own expectations in terms of what the players expect. I had a challenge similar to that on Monday, where a player went in hard, won the ball, but got the man, and you give the free kick because it's safe, and then you set the expectation of, we aren't allowing that. Yes, you may have won the ball, but you've won it too hard, or you've won it in the wrong way, and that sets expectations. And if the referee didn't want to set his expectations like that and wanted the game to be like how he did, then that's fine. It's obviously each to their own, and it's within the laws for you to be able to do that. I personally think it's on the border of a red. I'm going to sit on the fence and sit. I don't know which way yet, just due to the fact that he's coming quick. His foot isn't grounded, and it looks quite high. So you could argue a red, but I think you could give a yellow. But I think the minimum there would probably expectation is a yellow. A lot of people afterwards have said that they expected a yellow.
Last time we had a discussion, we had a talk about the three types you will argue for why giving a yellow or red card or nothing. I don't remember them in English, but one of them was reckless play, right?
Yeah.
And I definitely think this one was up there. So if he didn't think that was reckless, I don't know what it is then.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a red, but I definitely think it's a challenge that possibly shouldn't be seen, or shouldn't go unpunished. So I think it's definitely a free kick, even though you win the ball, doesn't matter. And I think it's reckless. I think it's a yellow card. But cool. So yeah, lots of incidents. There was other red cards and penalty awards, but those are the ones that I thought were interesting of talking about. And there was a few in the Champions League too. So there was Aaron Wan-Bissaka's red card, which was a stonewall red in my opinion. I think even Rimon, who's a avid Man U fan, would agree to that. But my interesting, at least from a refereeing standpoint, game was the Seville Salzburg game. There were 4 penalties, 3 to Seville, 1 to Salzburg. No, the other way around. 3 to Salzburg, 1 to Seville. Yeah. 2 were missed, and 1 was given by VAR. And actually, all of them were pretty straightforward penalties, in my opinion. But the one thing that was super interesting was in the second half, the Seville attacker had gone into the box and has basically, like, Tom Daly dived to try and win a penalty. He was already on a yellow card, so the referee had a really easy decision to just get the second yellow and send the player off. But what was super interesting about this specific incident was it looked like the Sevilla player was actually in offside position when he won the ball. And there isn't any conclusive evidence to say that the offside flag had gone up or not. But the Seville bench were moaning that it should have been offside and therefore the yellow card should be rescinded, etc. But from my understanding is, even if the play continues, it's only challenges like Dogzo, etc., where if VAR intervenes and a penalty is awarded and then it's decided it's not, they're the only ones that will be rescinded. It's not if it's a reckless challenge or a challenge of simulation, etc. But that was super interesting. But I want to kind of pull out one of the big points from the week, and it was a negative one in terms of English refereeing, but actually also you could say it's a positive one too. So in the late stages of the Dynamo Kiev Benfica game, Anthony Taylor decides to award a yellow card for a reckless challenge to a Kiev player. And for some reason, he obviously thought he'd already booked the player before, but he gave the player a yellow card and then showed him a red card for what he'd deemed to be a second yellow. And obviously, he hadn't been given a second yellow. To my surprise, there wasn't a huge amount of gesticulation from the Kiev players. It was like they didn't even know themselves. But the positive from this was the fact that actually whoever it was out of his team relayed that message back on to Anthony Taylor to say, hey, Anthony, we might have made a mistake here. Let's try and correct this now before we have to, before something worse happens. So it was a little bit of a negative from the week, but actually I'd like to brush it over with a positive around teamwork. Do you guys have any kind of things like that from your career that's happened, that you've been saved by your assistants, or you've had to save your assistants yourself?
Yeah, it happens all the time. I drop it all the time, especially in games like we were discussing before the podcast, where the intensity isn't high. So I've had a few games in the last 2 weeks, which if you watch the vlog, you'll find out, where the intensity hasn't been that high, and you try and match it or better it, and you don't. And then I think you came to one of the games where I almost didn't give a yellow card, and actually the player saved me because he walked up and went, "That's a yellow card, isn't it?" And I went, "Yeah, you know what? Yeah, it is." And it is just a lack of concentration, or you drop your performance for the game. And sometimes you just need that person to come up to you and be like, "That's wrong, isn't it?" And you're like, "Yeah, you know what? You're right." And it happens quite a lot if the game is very dull, I would say, and very one-sided, is when it happens more than most.
But I also think that as referees, we can get, because of the lack of referees, there's a shortage of referees, at least in England. I think it's happening all over the world. But this season, we're doing way more games than normal, right? Like we could do a Saturday, a Sunday, a Tuesday, Wednesday. And mentally, if you don't have enough time to switch off outside of the games, the games all fall into one. They all start to merge into one, and keeping focus and concentration levels high across those games is difficult. Anything in your past, Raymond, from a?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things to consider here, because I mean, if I'm refereeing a Barcelona game, I know probably all the players, right? So I know if I've given a yellow card to I don't know, Aguero or who else, but refereeing grassroots games, and a player have done 3 tackles, I have to remember that player, because that's 4 others that's also done a lot of tackles. I have to remember all of that, and sometimes I can get in trouble. Also, I had a game Sunday where I gave a yellow card to one of the players, but like after 15 minutes, I forgot who it was. So I mean, it happens sometimes, because and I know Dinamo Kiev and Benfica game aren't Barcelona or Bayern Munich. So he just maybe there was also a lot of yellow cards in this game. So probably he got a bit confused. Referees make mistakes. Remember that. Yeah, it happens. I mean, I think it happens more often than we think. We just don't see it on TV.
Yeah, true.
There were 6 yellow cards in a game, so it's possible that that's the case. I think there is
the funny thing, he was pointing when he gave the yellow card and a red card, right? He was pointing a lot of places, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah. He probably mistaken him for another player. I don't know.
Yeah, no, cool. Well, that is our roundup of this week's Premier League and Champions League games. Next week, we'll be talking about a whole host of other incidents. And if you guys have any incidents that you want to share with us that from your games that you want us to talk about, or any incidents that you're watching, let us know. And we will talk about those and give you our takes. But for this week, John, Raymond, thank you for your time. And we'll see everyone next week.